Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Net podcast. I'm your host, Brian. And joining me today is a special guest, Booe, from the rock band Ring of Fire. How you doing, brother?
Very good. Nice to meet you. Glad to be on the show. Thanks, man.
No worries. And actually, big shout out to the band together for actually helping put this whole thing together, especially with what Vox and Sticks, Christina and Greg were able to put together there. So
Yeah,
it was a good thing we were able to find each other. So this really helps out,
absolutely.
even though it keeps growing too. So I think we got an extensive list for the rest of this year and probably for the
Good.
next 2 years, to be honest. So let's see what
Good.
happens.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Where are you hailing from, actually?
I'm in Florida. I'm in Sarasota, Florida. The rest of the band is actually in Vegas. So this is more of a recording project than anything else.
Oh, you've been okay? I guess you guys get hit with that one
Oh, yeah,
hurricane
yeah.
came through.
It went north of us. So, and because I'm a fireman, we kind of have to deal with this every season. And every year, fortunately, Sarasota gets missed. There's this legend that Indians kind of came here every year because they knew this is the safest place in Florida. And then John Ringling had the Army Corps of Engineers do some research, find out where the safest place in Florida was for him to set up headquarters. So he came here, and then, of course, based on the legend, he kind of bought into the idea that this was the safest place to be. So far, it has been. I've been here 20 years and haven't had a direct hit yet.
That's pretty good. And
Yeah.
actually, I should say it's blessed in a certain way, too. So that's
Yeah,
good to hear.
yeah, absolutely.
But I guess since you say you're a firefighter, I guess I'm usually trying to figure out how it works, too, because I know they said there's ones that do, like, no pay, and then there's ones, I guess, they do pay you. Is
Right.
that, like,
Yeah, I'm a career guy. So
Okay.
they break it up into you can either be a volunteer, you can be paid per call, which is semi-volunteer, or you can be a career guy, and that's what I am. So I'm almost 17 years in, and a few years to go, and I'll be done.
That's good. And thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you.
I do have to ask, like, how's it being a firefighter, to be honest, before we jump into the music first? I thought we'd at least start there.
It's something I wanted to do from the time I was a kid. There was a small fire that broke out in the hedgerow across the street from me when I was growing up, 13 years old. And I'm 58 years old. So this is back before 911. So you had to actually call the fire department. So looking out the kitchen window, I'm 13 years old, and I see a fire in the hedgerow of our neighbors across the street. So I yelled to my brother, "Hey, call the fire department." I grab our garden hose, run across the street, and put it out. So by the time the firemen got there, here they see this kid, with a garden hose, putting out a fire. So they're patting me on the head, and they, put me on the fire truck. So I was hooked. I said, "Oh, this is something I want to do." And in Chicago, to become a fireman, it's next to impossible. They test about every 5 years. So if you can't get in when the testing is being done, and even if you do, you could wait 5 years. So you really have to want it. And music was more of a passion at that time. So I was focused on music. I was playing in a band called Strychnine. The drummer from Rain of Fire was my drummer at the time. He and I grew up together. In fact, he lived a block away from me, right down the street. So we've been playing music together most of our lives. And the fireman thing was always something I thought I'd never be able to do. When I moved to Florida, I found out there was no age restriction. So I actually got hired at 42. Didn't think it was something I'd ever be able to chase. So I get to do the two things that I always wanted to do. I'm a fireman, and I get to sing in rock band.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. I guess
Yeah.
did they always do, like, the little Dalmatian? They always have a Dalmatian dog?
We don't have dogs because, it's shift work. So you work 24 hours, and then you're off for 48. So because there'd be nobody who has sole responsibility for the dog, they can't do it. If the dog ever bit anybody, there'd be a liability. So the keeping of dogs kind of ended when they stopped using horse and buggy to pull the water tank and everything. They used Dalmatians primarily because they distracted the horses, because they see the spots and they're kind of focusing on the dog, focusing on where they're going, focusing on the dog, and they weren't as afraid of the fire. So Dalmatians kind of served a purpose. I'd love to have one there. I've got a dog myself, and he and I are best buds. So if I could, he'd be at the fire station with me. But because of liability and because nobody'd be solely responsible for the dog, they don't allow it.
I was going to say, I never actually knew that, to be honest. I always thought it was just meant to be like a certain mascot or just a little cheerleader trying to help you out.
Right.
I guess even the stress, too, because I imagine it's a pretty stressful job at times.
It is. The funny thing is it's moved because we're really not just firemen. We're emergency services. So we respond to a lot of emergency medical situations. I'd say that's probably 90% of what we do. We go to car accidents. We go to hazardous material spills. You name it, we do everything. If there's an emergency, they send the fire department. So the vast majority of the things we do now have nothing to do with fire. But when fires break out, obviously that's a facet of what we do too.
I guess if a hurricane were to hit Sarasota, I guess what would you guys have to do then? Are you just kind of responding to where any sort of major damage happens?
Yeah. Power lines down, any flooding, helping with evacuations. People still get injured. People still get sick. There's 500,000 people who live in Sarasota County, so those people end up kind of in a queue line waiting to get taken care of until the storm passes far enough that for us it's wind speeds in excess of 45 miles an hour. If it's over 45 miles an hour, we can't run our vehicles because it's too dangerous. So those calls continue to come in. So as soon as it's safe for us to go back on the road, we're out on the road again.
Was that we can't have it like spinning up in the air, kind of like a Wizard of Oz sort of thing
right.
there too. So.
Exactly.
And then we end up in Oz, the be Oz.
Right.
So.
It'd be like Twister. We have cows. We'd be flying in the air.
Yeah. But thank you so much for your service. I would say.
Well, thanks, man.
I never understood living in Florida, to be honest. I could always understand going there in like the wintertime, for instance, because that's actually what my parents do. They'll go to like Key West and like kind of stick around Naples and that eastern half of Florida, to be honest, because it's always real nice there during the winter.
Yeah.
But then it's almost like the insurance is out of control whenever hurricane season ends up coming around.
Right.
So it's almost like, why do you want to live there, to be honest?
Yeah.
So, but I think.
Unless you're a water person, if you like the heat, and if you're a water person, this is a great place to be. If you're, if you like, there's a no tax state too. So if you're, this for financial reasons for a lot of people, this is a good place to be too.
Yeah, they gotta bring it down somehow, especially for the retirees who want to.
Right.
And then they'll send their money off to the other states for their kids to go to college or anything like that.
Exactly.
I don't know how it works, but I don't know. They do something right, so there's something. And I think it's always funny with like the northern half. So Tallahassee, and you also said Sarasota doesn't get hit a whole lot as well.
Right. Yeah, Sarasota gets avoided. Tampa Bay hasn't had a direct hit in about 100 years. So Sarasota is just a little bit south of Tampa. So this whole region is relatively safe, but the storms hit south of us. They hit north of us. The most recent one hit about 2.5, 3 hours north of Tampa. So, it's a crapshoot. You just never know where they're going to go. For some reason, the last 100 years, this area has been pretty safe. But next year could be a different story. Heck, the rest of this year could be a different story.
Well, didn't Hurricane Ian hit right on Tampa Bay?
Pretty near. It actually hit south of us. It hit Fort Myers and Cape Coral area, and it was pretty devastating down there.
I would say, my parents told me it was still pretty trashed after they were down there, actually visiting family too. So it was. Yeah. Then we're back to square one again now with the whole round of hurricanes about to come through there too. So.
Exactly. And September is kind of the hot spot. This is the month when it's the worst. So it kind of peaks around now. If we can weather this month, then usually it tapers off and it's not so bad.
Let's hope so. So good luck there, mate. So
yeah.
Joe, I want to thank you so much for coming on my podcast right here. The way this is going to work is the way this is going to work is we're just getting to know you more both as the musician, but also as the individual too, and we can also elaborate more on Ring of Fire. I did like a couple of your videos because I wanted to do a little research before jumping into this.
I appreciate it.
So I guess we'll start with the first one right here. Who is Joe Booe? And I guess how did you become a musician? And then we'll jump into Ring of Fire afterwards.
I've been a singer since I was a teenager. I had a cousin who was a drummer. It's local band stuff. But this is in the late 60s, early 70s. And my parents had 4 boys within 4 years of each other. So we would often get kind of passed off to the aunt and uncle to take care of us on weekends. So my parents, they were young parents, so they'd have some time alone. Well, my cousin was a drummer, and so often I would sit in the basement listening to those guys jam. So I'm 4 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, listening to them play, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, a lot of the late 60s, early 70s kind of stuff, and Jimi Hendrix and the Guess Who, Grand Funk Railroad. So I loved all that stuff. And so from that time on, I wanted to be in a band. I knew it was always something I wanted to do. So when I was 13, my cousin gave me my first microphone. It was actually, a garbage microphone that was a part of his drum setup. But it was my first mic. So I got together with some guys from high school, started jamming. It didn't take long, and I was playing out pretty regularly. And like I said, Pete Bartolome, my drummer, lived down the street. So every once in a while we'd get together and jam. And in our 20s, decided to band together. He had already started with a group of guys called Strychnine. And Strychnine ended up becoming a pretty solid staple in the Chicagoland area, kind of a quad state area. We played everywhere and released 2 albums together. And when that kind of came to an end, part of the reason it came to an end, guys were moving on. We went on to different things. I moved out to California, and I sang with a band called 7 Months, released an album with them that had some music in a really bad horror movie called Witch House 2. And we did pretty well in Europe in top 40 radio over there. It was progressive rock, which was not getting airplay in 1999, 2000, 2002, 2003. But we did well over there. What was funny was Rob Chrisman, who's the guitarist for Rain of Fire, happened to rent this movie the very first day it came out. It was one of those bad horror movies that went right to video. So he rented Blockbuster the night it came out. He's watching the movie. It's so bad he's dozing on the couch. And then he hears part of the soundtrack. And it's like, wait a second, that sounds like Joe. Because he and I had played together in a band called Geneva. And so he ends up emailing me. He says, hey, dude, I just saw your video and heard your song in this really lousy horror movie. So it gave us a chance to reconnect. We had played together before Strychnine in the early 90s. And lost touch, hadn't spoken in a while. So that reconnected us, and we'd always said we wanted to get back together because we had written some songs together that we wanted to, at some point, try to record and try to do something with. So Strychnine ended up getting back together briefly in 2017, 2018. We worked on a couple songs, worked on some video, and the guitarist had really bad arthritis and didn't want to continue to play. So I got in touch with Rob to see if he would be willing to continue with some of the Strychnine songs. And as he listened to him, he's like, hey, Rob's a really well-schooled musician. He's an incredible guitarist, plays a number of instruments. He's like, look, I'm really not getting it. I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you send me something of yours and let's see what we can do with it. And it turned out to be the very first song we did, Rain of Fire. And so then Rain of Fire was launched. And so it was Pete Bartolome and I from Strychnine, Jim Davich, who's our bass player, and Rob. So ever since, we've kind of been running with it. And the album, we're working on an album, but doing a single at a time release. And the album is a concept album built around the idea of a guy who gets injured in war. So the very first song, Rain of Fire, it kind of draws the parallels between kind of dragons of legend and contemporary warfare and how mankind really is overwhelmed by that. And so he's overwhelmed in a state of war, gets injured. And over the course of the album, he's moving from past life to past life. Doesn't know if he's losing his mind or if he's losing his life. And so it'll come to a resolution at the end of the album. And we haven't gotten there yet. But so as we release the singles, they're in single format. But when we do the album, there will be interludes and just some small segues between the songs that will explain some of the storyline. So it will be a full-blown concept from start to finish.
Damn, you guys are thinking it through. That's very damn good.
Yeah. Rob and I, because this has always been a passion for us, we really liked the idea of building this around a concept. So the concept is, progressively evolved, but we really like it.
I would say I really do like concept albums because I always do in this case we can kind of say it's like a 45-minute or however long it is, like short story in a way, whenever you think about it too.
Exactly. And one of the ones that I've always loved most is the Operation Mindcrime album. I think it was incredible storytelling. And I think they did a great job of doing that small messaging between some of the songs so that it carried the storyline from one to the other. Because, for the most part, that album, each individual song stands alone. But once you put them in sequence, it really does tell that entire story, which is pretty incredible.
Operation Mindcrime, was that Queensryche?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I wanted to make sure, yeah.
Right,
Actually, I think my dad, he likes Queensryche, but insofar I think it's like Jet City Woman. I don't think he really expanded that far, to be honest. But
yeah,
I think it's like one of those groups like he knows like who the band is, but he doesn't know probably every single song too. It's pretty just like the hits. Right. They probably blast on the radio for the 10 millionth time, to be honest too.
Right, exactly. So, and since we're all of the guys that I've got with me in Rain of Fire, we're all older. That was really kind of our generation of music, So the Queensryche thing, some of the earlier concept albums like The Wall by The Who or by Pink Floyd and The Who's Tommy stuff, So we grew up kind of really enamored with that whole idea of building an album because it's it's relatively easy to write a single, but to write an album that's all interconnected, that's some tough stuff. So we were welcoming the challenge.
I guess you mentioned you had your soundtrack in a very, we could say, B-rated horror movie. I guess which one was it? What was it called?
Right. It was called Witch House 2. And the band was called 7 Months. The song was called Start It Over. Great album, progressive rock, a lot of really well-schooled musicians. So I enjoyed it an awful lot, but I ended up doing some damage to my vocal cords when we were getting ready to do our sophomore album. And so I ended up having to exit the band, didn't sing for a little while, spent some time rehabbing my voice, and it's a little different. Some of the early stuff that I'd done with Strychnine was, kind of stratospheric vocals that was popular at the time. And now the things we're working on kind of delve into a little deeper vocal, deeper intonation, which is kind of normal for an aging singer.
I was the same way, trying to do like the Rob Halford kind of screams, to be honest, or that.
I was back then. Back then, I was, it was Halford. It was, Ian Gillan. Those guys were my heroes. I wanted to emulate those guys.
So I guess you kind of jump to like influences too. I guess did you have like any other influences outside of Rob Halford and Ian Gillan?
Yeah, Jeff Tate from Queensryche is a huge one. I always liked Sammy Hagar too. In fact, I was more of a fan of the Van Hagar period of Van Halen than the David Lee Roth period. I really like the guys who are a little more thoughtful with lyrics. I do all the lyric writing for every band that I've ever been in. So Neil Peart was an influence too, because I think he does a lot of really thoughtful lyrical writing. And for a non-singer, that was pretty impressive, the things that Neil Peart did with Rush. So I really enjoy that. But yeah, at the time I liked the guys with really high voices, and now I'm, a little bit more in tune with like Sully from Godsmack, Dave Draiman from Disturbed. So that kind of stuff, the deeper, growlier voices, Brett from Shinedown. So those guys I like a lot.
I would say I think he really would dug like Phil Anselmo with Pantera, because
in
the Cowboys from Hell album, he actually did kind of a little bit more of like the Rob Halford kind of high pitched. I don't want to say screaming, but you know what I mean. Like
right.
High pitched singing.
Yeah,
I
right.
Screaming again.
reaching the top of his his range. So
yeah, and then he toned it down. It got heavier, and then like he didn't do it as much as like he probably should. So
yeah,
that'd probably be interesting. And
yeah.
I was going to say it's like a small world, too, since you said you're future drummer, because it was like living down the road not too far from you, too. So it's almost something like small world after all, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. It's funny. There's kind of a circle of us, a group of us that either know or know of each other. We all grew up in the Chicagoland area. So Rob Chrisman, the guitarist, he and I knew each other from a band 30 years ago. And a couple of the songs that we have on the album, like Hangman and Voices, Hangman was actually called Hangman. Voices had a different name. It was called Cries in the Wind. They were songs that we had done 30 years ago. And so to me, that really exemplifies the impressiveness of Rob's capabilities. He's such an amazing guitarist and just a crazy good songwriter. That song, Voices, was actually written 30 years ago. Same with Hangman. And, we revamped him. We modernized him. I rewrote lyrics and melodies. But for the most part, Rob's parts were what they were 30 years ago.
I think instead of like remaster, it's like remodernize. That sort of thing too.
Right. Like exactly.
Right. That's pretty cool. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into Ring of Fire, since you did touch on it a little bit too, but I guess elaborate on a little bit more than what you got. So,
like I said, the drummer and I grew up together. So he actually does most of the mixing and mastering. I do all the vocals, and I'll send him vocal mixes, but he's doing all the mixing and mastering of the music. Rob provides the foundation for most of what we do. And since this is a long distance project, I'm in Florida, they're all in Nevada. But even in Nevada, they don't live that close to each other. Not close enough that they're like practicing together or even recording together. So each guy's doing his own parts individually. So it's really a kind of file sharing project, which makes it crazy. Rob will send me what he's got as a guitar piece, and we'll build around that. So I'll write lyrics and melodies around that, and I'll do all the background vocals, and then send it to Pete, the drummer, and Jim, the bass player, and they'll build their parts. And so because all of us work full time, this is kind of it's a longer process. It takes time, but it gives us the opportunity to turn it into rehearsal. So we'll practice with what we have, throw the ideas out to the other guys. They hear it, make suggestions, we make adjustments, and by the end of a couple months, we've got a finished product. So it's crazy. These are songs that have never been performed. They're songs that have never even been rehearsed. Each guy knows his parts, but we have never gotten into the same room and done this stuff together. So when it's all said and done, we will, and we'll try to find ways to support it. And whether that means, performing locally in Vegas, coming down here and playing, whatever we have to do. But we we really do want to get this stuff out, not just in recorded format, but in live format too.
I guess, would you consider like doing a whole, I guess, I always think of funny names too, because like sometimes there's like the Eternal Damnation tour or something like that too, or
right.
kind of spell like that too. But I guess, would you tour around the States, or would you like to at least try to go internationally if you could?
That would be something we'd love to do. I think the biggest problem that all of us would run into is the finances of it. As relatively unknown band, and we're working on that. As a matter of fact, I didn't really even start to promote us until about a month ago. Didn't really have much of a Facebook presence, didn't have much of a presence anywhere until recently. And so, unless the finances made sense for all of us, because like I said, we all have full-time jobs. This is something that we all chased after for a long time, or the better part of our lives. And at some point, you have to kind of put it on the shelf and say, all right, well, this is going to have to be a part-time hobby or part-time job, hobby kind of thing. And then with the nature of this project, since, I'm here, they're in Vegas, it makes it a little harder to try and, even do regional touring. But it is something that we've considered.
Go to Vegas and then we just throw the like little pimp up stage on like the Strip right there, and it's like trying to find our music right then and there too. So,
and these guys, they've done a really good job on getting us out in Vegas. KOMP plays our stuff on Sundays, and they've been doing that for the last couple months, which is great. And we can probably get into a handful of places in Vegas, so I know we can at least start there and see where it goes from there.
I was actually in Vegas a couple of years ago, and I would say avoid Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. That one's a pretty penny. So, very good food, but man, it is a hole in your wallet. I will tell you that much.
I'll bet.
So, it was still a beautiful city. It was pretty crowded, but we kind of like stuck inside. We were kind of like going through this labyrinth of all the various casinos and everything too.
Right.
Just though they probably get maybe half a mile to where Caesar's Palace was, to be honest, because we're staying in Four Seasons, but I think it was part of the Mandalay Bay. We actually stayed in the Mandalay Bay.
Yeah.
So.
That's crazy town, man.
I know.
When I lived in LA, I couldn't get anybody to come out to LA to visit. They'd only come to Vegas. So I'd have to either fly or drive to Vegas. So I spent as much time in Vegas seeing friends of mine from back home and family from back home as I ever could have in LA.
I think they need more casinos in LA, to be honest, because I think they associate too much with crime dramas and everything else. So I think
right.
LA gets a bad rep for hosting all the crime dramas. So actually, a little bit of Vegas too, because there actually was a CSI Las Vegas that
right.
Me and my mom, we actually watched that a good bit, and that was always that was actually a great show. It was intense because boy, they they amplified the murder scenes and everything too, or at least playing it out like how the person was getting murdered and everything too. It's like damn, this is dark, man. That sort of thing.
It is.
So that's pretty cool. And I guess, so you said this group is still like relatively, it has been going on for a while, but since you guys have been separate too, I guess, did COVID impact you guys in some sort of way?
It didn't. In fact, if anybody benefited from the whole, or was not impacted really by the whole COVID thing, it would have been us, because like I said, everything we were doing was file shared. So, nothing prevented us from being able to do what we were doing. Rob did experience, some health issues because he's a teacher in Vegas. So he ended up developing some respiratory issues through the portable that he was working out of. COVID actually benefited him because he got to stay home. When he got back to school, he had an outside service come in and do some testing, found there was mold in the portable. So it really it knocked him down for a little while. That was maybe the one thing that did slow us down a little bit was Rob's health was he was in pretty bad shape for a little while, and fortunately full recovery now, but reconsidering whether or not he wants to stay in Vegas.
I guess how did it impact you with your job wise? I guess what you guys had to do differently?
We had to split the way we approached calls. So we're a little different than some other departments. We provide the ambulance service as well as the fire service. So some of our guys were dedicated solely to an ambulance, and some were dedicated solely to fire trucks. And like I said, 90% of what we do is emergency medicine. So half the department was doing 90% of the work, and the other half were doing 10% of the work. So for us, it was probably not a great thing in terms of morale, because half the guys were annoyed that the other half weren't carrying their load by no fault of their own.
Well, I could probably blame the state for that, to be honest. So, but I guess, did you have any brushes with COVID? I know you said Rob had.
Never caught it.
You never did?
Never had it. No, never. Lucky. And didn't get vaccinated. So didn't want to, and been fortunate. Never got it.
Well, let's keep that train rolling.
Do you ever get it?
Did you ever get it? Believe it or not, I actually did because well, actually, here's how it went. Because I always remember the date when I started working from home because I work in financial services, and it started on March 15, 2020. I always remember that date because that was when I first started working from home for the first time. So it was big help. And I go literally 2 3/4 of a year not getting it, or at least maybe having little skits or something like that because I honestly can't tell you. But we go to Nashville, and this is still a couple of years ago, and this is me and my parents, and we go down to Broadway, just party and have a good time as you would in Nashville, to be honest.
Yeah.
My dad ends up getting sick as we end up coming home, and then sure enough, he passes it on to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried hopping on my drum set, which my basement kind of makes like a little bit of an L shape, so it's tucked over there somewhere. And I tried hopping on that, and I couldn't do it. I mean, I was just that fatigued. And sure enough, I woke up with a fever the one night. I am vaccinated too, so at this point, it would have just been like maybe your typical cold and flu or anything like that. But I woke up with a fever. And I actually put on my sweatpants and I just bring the covers up and everything too. Just trying to use friction to knock it away. Do that sort of thing too. I mean, I'm rubbing my legs and everything too. I'm pretty much starting a fire in my bed, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, you know what? They put me on Paxlovid, or however they pronounce it. But
Paxlovid.
Paxlovid. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't really. It kind of alleviates in a way. I think it kind of like tries to lessen the symptoms in a way, but
that's good.
So it was about a week, and then eventually it wore off a little bit.
Yeah.
Not sure what's been going on really, to be honest, but I think allergies here kick up now and again, but every now and again you get a little cough or a little stuffy nose at time to time too, but we're getting by.
Yeah, and I think it's here to stay, so it's going to be a part of the normal cold and flu, issue every year.
Instead of ammonia, now it's more of COVID.
Right.
Geez. Tragically. So
yeah,
I know Florida tended to get a bad rep because of the whole thing with COVID during the couple of years. I guess would you say their response kind of paid off in the end, or? I
think so in a big way. Our numbers compared to a lot of the other states that didn't open up right away, that didn't allow schools to go back into session, didn't allow businesses to open up again. We had far lower numbers. And because I work in emergency services, I saw it regularly. We really didn't respond to nearly as many COVID calls as they seem to indicate from some of the other states that remained in lockdown or kept schools closed, mandated masks and continue to mandate masks. So yeah, I'm kind of a health nut. I've got a personal training business on the side too that I've had for 37 years, and the healthiest people that I know are the ones that either didn't get vaccinated. Or just get this is Sunshine State, so you get a lot of sun, and vitamin D is one of the primary methods to prevent yourself from getting either sicker if you have COVID or prevent you from getting sick in the first place. So a lot of sunlight, getting out, getting fresh air, because it's not really seasonal. It's year-round summertime here. Sometimes a little too hot in the summers, but you're outside all the time, so you're breathing clean air. You're not in a restricted airspace where you're breathing the same infected air that somebody else in the family that has COVID is going to get you infected, and you're getting a lot of sunshine.
Let's say in this case we're making sure with vitamin D, that sort of
exactly,
thing.
Man, exactly, right.
That sort of thing too. I'm saying, man, you keep yourself busy because you got like the band, you're also a firefighter, and now you got this little health thing on the side too. So I mean,
yeah.
How's a man supposed to keep himself happy?
It's. You have to do the things that you love, and you can't look back with any regrets. So my plate may be full, but I'm a happy guy.
That's good. I would say I do work 2 jobs as well, and then on top of podcasting too. So I guess we can at least say that we're.
Well, there you go. You're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing I am.
I would say I do the restaurant industry, which is my second job, and it gets a little stressful when you get like a whole bunch of people all at once, especially like those real big orders, especially if it's like. A couple get like steaks, that sort of thing too. So you can imagine it's.
Well, and you got a drum kit back there too, so that means you're playing music too. So you got a lot going on too, man.
Well, actually, that's more for drum covers and everything too. I would like to get to the band at some point, but a couple guys I reached out to. One's actually in Florida, and do you know the band Storm Kingdom by any chance?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Justin.
As a matter of fact, he just did an interview with Vox and Guest.
Those sons of bitches. And I mean, I got the interview first. I would say I got the interview first, but now I got speed through it. But yeah, he was a real cool guy, and he said he was around in the Tampa Bay area too. So maybe you guys should try to get together for something
Yeah.
or something like that.
Well, like I said, it's only been about a month that I've kind of been pushing, promoting the band on Facebook and through other media. And he was one of the first guys I ended up connecting with when I, started following guys and having them follow us back. And I like his stuff. He's got good music, man.
I would say much of a metalhead whenever you go to like the heavier metal things like death metal or black metal.
I'm not a black metal, death metal guy, but I like heavy metal. And like I said, I grew up listening to hard rock. My cousin was, playing Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and so he was playing stuff that they would have, they probably would have called acid rock at the time. And with Black Sabbath being kind of the godfathers of heavy metal, I've always been a Sabbath fan, and I've always liked metal. So even in the early days of Halford, UFO, that whole thing, and the way it's progressed into a band, then it moved on to like speed metal, like Metallica and Iron Maiden, and as it's morphed and developed into other forms, I've liked most of them. Some of them are a little bit too dark and heavy for me, but not to say I don't appreciate the musicianship in it and the quality that goes into it. I think the only thing I don't listen to is rap. I listen to just about anything, and I can appreciate most anything. Not a rap fan. And all the guys in the band kind of share the same perspective. Like Rob is really into like 12th century to 18th century music. So a lot of what he's working on is ancient melodies kind of stuff and trying to apply it to hard rock, heavy metal, and progressive. And, all of us are kind of students of all that type of music. Rob's also into a lot of classical music. So being such a student of music brings a new flavor, a different twist to some of the things we're trying to do, which is cool.
I would say I had to laugh at the term acid rock. I can understand like maybe like high rock or in terms of like smoking marijuana too, because I think they did like a little confession like during one of their interviews, be like smoke marijuana and be like, wait, you're joking, right? No, it wasn't. That's what I think too. It was something along those lines, but something like that. I can understand that too, but
and I guess because of the dripping on acid was kind of a big deal at the end of the 60s and early 70s. So I guess they figured, those guys must have been doing it too. Some of them didn't do anything. I remember seeing an interview with Ted Nugent. He talked about like, I didn't do anything. My drug was women. That's all he cared about. He'd go to the same parties as Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, and he would just beeline for the hottest girl in the place. So I always admired that about him, because I'm not a big party guy either.
We'll say have a nice little line out there and be like, line up for some nuggets. That's what I say too.
Yeah, right.
That's very cool. Actually, my dad, I tend to respect Nugent more as a musician than his political views or anything like that too. But
yeah,
my dad's seen him a good number of times when he was always an opening act in Pittsburgh. Right. So that's where I ran.
Yeah.
And I think you respect him as a musician. And you would say he's more of the opening act, but I guess you'd be okay with him getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I guess he did at some point.
Yeah, I think so. But, he'd been around for a long, long time, and through a handful of, different iterations. I got a bunch of old Nugent albums, his early stuff, and always liked him with Damn Yankees. And he kind of fell off the map after that. So I think that's when he kind of redirected, focused a lot on like hunting and then getting involved in politics and stuff. So, and I'm conservative. Everybody has their own, political affiliations. So being conservative, I kind of align a little bit more with the way Nugent thinks, but he can be off the rails a little bit sometimes, but it's entertaining to me. I like it.
I would say I'm a centrist. I mean, I think you're all pretty crazy, to be honest. So, so that's pretty cool. But regardless, good to have you along for the ride here, mate. And it's good to see you made through COVID too. So
yeah.
I guess so you did talk about your social media a little bit away. I guess let's start with maybe YouTube, and then I guess any other social media you guys uses. I guess when did you start, and then what do you hope to achieve with each one?
Well, we do all of our own in-house video. So I use Power Director 16. It's a little older version of what's available now, but because it's long distance, I have to have the guys do a lot of green screen stuff for me. So, and I use a lot of stock video, but I try to build some fairly decent quality video around the storyline. So the YouTube channel, it's okay. It's not as, the numbers aren't as high as I'd like them to be, but like I said, I just started promoting the whole thing, our entire kind of social media platform. So we're approaching 200 subscribers. I'd like to see a little bit more. We're right around 500 followers on Spotify. We've got 2,000 followers on Facebook. And a vast majority of this has all been pretty much accomplished in the last month and a half. So I love the community. Exactly, man. Thank you. And to people like you, the community of people I've been able to connect with on Facebook has been mind-blowing. I think a lot of bands, before they really tap into social media, realize that friends and family are really not going to give you an awful lot of support with your art, because it's just not something that they're passionate about. But all of us are very passionate about music. So I've found that I get an awful lot more responses and immediacy of response from all the other bands that we've connected with just in the last month and a half than I'd ever get from friends and family and, people who, claim to really be supportive of what we're doing. And I understand it. An artist is always going to be much more appreciative of other art. And so it's an incredible community that's connected, yourself included. I mean, I see how supportive everybody is with one another and with all the other people who are like being introduced into the community, people who have been in it for a while. So that to me is pretty exciting. And I love the idea of supporting all these other bands, because I've now tapped into a lot of music that I would have otherwise missed out on. And indie bands, I've always been a firm believer. The best musicians that I've ever heard or ever seen are always unknowns or relatively unknowns. So I'm enjoying being kind of now immersed into this community. And it's been a real joy. And I find myself on my phone constantly, just reaching out and connecting with other bands. So, and I hadn't been doing that at all in the past.
I actually only subscribed recently too. That was when I was checking out your YouTube channel for the little research and everything I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So I think I might have been the 180. So I at least got you to the
Awesome.
180 mark too. So
awesome. I appreciate it.
No worries. But we still got another 180 more before we reach the full circle mark, as we like to say.
You got it.
So
you got it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And social media, it's always so weird. I guess, did you always get like a lot of those messages saying like, hey, we'll help promote your music and stuff like that too?
Absolutely.
With like the bots and crap and everything?
Yep. Drives you crazy. I mean, no matter what, you want to be reaching out to as many people as you can, and you know that some are going to reach back to you that you don't necessarily want, but and I've talked to some of the other bands too recently about this. You end up getting bombarded, and it's amazing. It's usually foreign promoters. It's foreign guys who will tell you, hey man, I can get you, tens of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. I can get you tens of thousands of subscribers on Spotify. Look, man, I don't want bots. I want people who are actually going to listen to my music, actually watch my videos, and actually enjoy the stuff. So I don't mind doing the grassroots, grind. Never had. And, playing shows was always in the past how we developed, the substantial amount of our following. So social media, while it might be, some benefit, it's not the where-all be-all for sure. And it's amazing how many of those guys reach out to you trying to steal some of your money and, with promises of pie in the sky.
Yeah, I know what you mean too. And unfortunately, I've been a victim of that, to be honest. But
yeah,
we have to at least keep our eyes open these days and just try to ignore them as best you can.
Right.
I have to say now it's surprisingly more on LinkedIn too, because I kind of use that for a little promotion as well too. It seems to be where they're mostly coming from nowadays.
Right.
The other ones I just kind of ignore whenever it's like on Instagram, for instance, or anything like that too. So
yeah.
Best of luck to you. Yeah, people, please watch out for those kind of people too.
Yeah, exactly.
They will not help you.
Yeah.
They will let you down, that sort of thing too. So
yeah.
But I guess let's jump into like the gear you guys use too. So I guess let's start with you, and then do you know what everybody else uses in the group? Because I did see.
I do, and I reached out to the guys to have them tell me, because like I said, we're virtual, and Pete, I'd always kind of known what he was using because he used it when we were together with Strychnine. So I'm kind of a bare bones. I'm just using a Focusrite Scarlett, just 2 in, 2 out, because that's all I really need. I'm just doing vocals single track at a time. I use a Studio Project C1 microphone, which I absolutely love for an inexpensive mic. I can remember when they first came out about 20 years ago, there was a lot of comparison to a Neumann. And, it's a relatively inexpensive mic. And I've had it for 20 years. I've got 2 of them, and they really stand up. I use, rather than using just the Focusrite for my preamp, I use TC Helicon Voice Live to run through, because I think it's a much cleaner, better sounding preamp. I know Rob uses, got the list of everything he uses.
A little cheat sheet.
Yeah. Because he's got a nice collection of guitars. He uses Gibsons, Fenders, Paul Reed Smith, Jacksons. He's running through Fractal X FX3 as a pre. He's Marshall Mono, Block Power Slave, and then he's using 4x12 Celestion speaker cab. And Pete is running through. He's got a 7-piece Premier XPK series drums, Zildjian and Paiste cymbals. He uses a Simmons SD series electric drums. We're trying to do everything to click track. So he'll do a lot of stuff using the Simmons SD series. because then he can modify the drum sounds, make adjustments to whatever he's looking to do. And he runs everything through Mackie Pro FX board. All of us are using Cakewalk Sonar for DAW, and we've really, over the course of years of using it, we've really found it satisfies all of our needs. We got tons of plugins that we're using, and it's a lot of great stuff. A lot of great stuff. Jim, unfortunately, he works like a fiend, so I didn't get back. He didn't get back to me with what gear he's using. So unfortunately, I don't know. And in terms of like you had asked me earlier what my influences were. I know with these guys like Rob, he's deeply influenced by classical music. So Bach, Mozart, but he's also and one of the things he and I shared was an affinity for the Ronnie James Dio, Ritchie Blackmore relationship, and the focus on trying to really build medieval hard rock and heavy metal. So he's also, Rob's also a big Ritchie Blackmore fan. Yngwie Malmsteen, who did the same thing with a lot of minors, doing everything in minors. Knopfler, Boz Scaggs. So he really likes like the whole medieval Celtic, Baroque sounds, classical music. And then Pete, like every other drummer, influenced by Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, Mike Mangini, so he's a big Mangini fan too, Carter Beaufort, and John Bonham.
It's funny with your drummer too, because everybody who's said a drummer from like Dream Theater, they always say Mike Portnoy, to be honest. So.
Right. And it's hard to differentiate between the two because they're so similar. But we're also, all of us really we like Avenged Sevenfold a lot. So we're still influenced by Portnoy, even from his early days with Dream Theater, later years, with Avenge. But Mangini, he's a beast.
I would say for Halloween, I think you guys should do a little piece of heaven and just do that one. Oh my gosh, that would be a killer one, to be honest.
I'll have to throw it out to those guys, yeah.
Oh man, that'd be so awesome.
Yeah.
I actually did put a little Halloween playlist together because I had one with Black Sabbath. That's the opening one. That's their self-titled opening track that kind of like kickstarted the doom sort of scene versus too.
Nice.
And I guess, do you know I want to say thrash metal band, but it's one of the newer new wave of British heavy metal groups. It was Venom.
Yes, I've heard Venom stuff before.
I would say I got a couple of songs I want to do from them too. With ironically, I love the song "Buried Alive," and it leads right into "Raise the Dead" afterwards too. So I figured it's a perfect fit for the Halloween season. So
yeah, definitely.
So we got some drum covers in the works right now, and you know what? I would like to do a little piece of heaven, but I feel like should I do it as a collaboration, or should we just do it on my own and see where it goes? I don't know. Yeah. I don't tour. Yeah. What would you do?
I'd do collaboratively.
You would do
absolutely. Yeah. Get some other guys involved. Hell yeah.
I'll have to see. I mean, that's gonna be tough, but we'll have to see what happens. It might not be a Halloween one though. That's the thing. It might not be a Halloween one. We'll have to see.
I always like the idea of collaborations because it gives you a chance to do your own like dream team kind of thing. You pull the guys in that you want, that you see is this is somebody who I think is the best at his craft. This is the other guy who I think is the best at what he does, and so it's your own personal dream team kind of thing.
It would be. I've done collaborations like we do like drum collaborations too, where it's like one drummer does. We both do the same track and everything too, so that thing.
Right.
I've not done a full one. I've done one with like a vocalist actually. And that was actually a Good Charlotte song, "The Truth." And it was actually a guy out of Scotland who has a real good singing voice.
Cool.
He does have a good real singing voice, but he was not able to do like the rough Irish sort of voice too that the singer does in the actual song too. So
right.
Oh well, but it worked out pretty nice. That's the thing I will say. So I gave this guy a nice idea too. So I'll have to see if he has enough time for October to come around. So
right.
So best of luck to you, Fade. We'll see what happens. And, but I guess let's see where we're at. I guess tell us your process of like how you guys create a song too, because you guys did say like it seems like your drummer seems to bring it all together and everything too. Do you guys start with like the guitars? Then you guys...
We do. We start with the guitars, which like I said, since we're not in the same place, it's hard for us to kind of approach it as a collaborative rehearsal.
That's the beauty of
somebody can't bring in an idea. Right. And we've tried. The guys have tried like Jam Kazam, where they can. It's like this, and they're practicing together. But that's about as close as they've been to getting in the same room. So typically, what we'll do is Rob will have a piece, and he'll complete it, and he'll send it to me to a click track. And so he's got a drum machine to it. He's got a click track, and we remove that pretty much immediately after I do my vocals. So he'll send it to me, and I'll write melodies and vocals to it. I'll send that to Pete and Jim and back to Rob, and all of us will kind of start to build the song accordingly. Pete does his drum parts, Jim does his drum parts or his bass parts, and then we send everything to Pete, and goes through multiple drafts. So unlike for most musicians, they may be buying studio time, or even if they're recording at home, they've been able to do 1,000 reps on the same song. We don't get that opportunity. For us, we're kind of building the song and going through multiple iterations of it. So our reps are individual, and I'm singing along to what the next song or the next version of the song that's been put out by Pete in a mix. So it's a little different process, but we're really enjoying it because for the most part, nobody is being stymied by their own personal creativity to their part. So whatever you want to bring to the table, you bring, and we'll throw ideas out on the table. If we hear something like, why don't you try this? Or they'll say to me, hey, Joe, why don't you try this? I'm not crazy about that part. Can you try to redo it? So we'll progressively build the song that way. A little different than most people are able to do, but for us, it works.
I was like, did you always do the lyrics first, or do you do the music first and then do the lyrics afterwards? So see
it depends. It depends. When Pete and I were together with Strychnine, our guitarist, Pete Zefkiles, would come in with a guitar riff, and because it was rehearsal, these guys would start building, and I'd say, no, keep playing the verse, keep playing the verse. And as they played the verse, I'd be sitting over in the corner, writing lyrics out, and I'd already get the melody in my head, and I'd write the lyrics as I was doing the melody, so it was really kind of at the same time. Now, it really depends. If a storyline catches me, like the very first piece that Rob sent me was Rain of Fire, and his inspiration for it was, you remember the scene in the movie Rain of Fire, when Matthew McConaughey, sleeveless, he comes jumping out with the battle axe, right, to like off of a big high pier, off the pier to try and kill the dragon. So that scene was kind of the inspiration for the riff, and then he built this whole song around it. And because it was the first song we were working on, I said, you know what, I don't want to deviate too far from what your original idea was for this. So I wanted to incorporate that notion of the storyline from Rain of Fire and the dragons, but also bring it to kind of contemporary warfare storyline, and then build the concept from there. So, but yeah, a lot of that, it's really kind of where a lot of them come from is I'll start with a story in my head because the music will tell me a story. And so the lyrics and the melody are almost really kind of coming at the same time. And I've got an English background too. I was, for a while in college, I was an English major, and I've absorbed every book imaginable when I was a kid. So I've always got a ton of story and resource in my head to draw from.
So you're a secret nerd at most, to be honest. So.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
I would say you also struck me like you would be a Marvel and DC fan, to be honest, too. So I imagine you collect the comic books, too.
I am, absolutely. Yep, huge comic book fan.
I guess so. Which it's always weird because they always seem to get a little bit increasingly darker as what was it, like the 1940s when they started coming out, or 1950s?
Yeah. 30s, 40s, 50s. That's when the Dark Knight and Superman and Captain America all kind of came out pre-war time and into wartime. So yeah, they definitely got darker.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. In fact, the recent one I saw was it was called The Murder Machine. It was because Batman loses Alfred. Apparently, the Rogues Gallery breaks into the Batcave and ends up killing Alfred. Yeah. So he creates this artificial intelligence with Cyborg, aka Victor, and unfortunately, this intelligence loses its mind or whatever. It's unstable.
Yeah.
So it ends up biting into him and he kills everybody. So, I mean, it's increasingly dark then. I'm thinking
yeah,
damn.
Yeah.
That sort of thing too.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I think at the same time you can also sympathize with Batman kind of losing his mind in a way if that were to happen, considering how much of a father figure Alfred was in a way.
Yeah, right.
But
you more of a Christopher Nolan Batman fan, or are you more of the previous generation of the Batmans?
I would say Kevin Conroy is the voice of Batman, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and may rest in peace too. He's no longer with us. Yeah. And I would say Christian Bale, his was very good. I would say that his was very good. Yeah. So I would rank him a close second, to be honest.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I would say in terms of the Joker, it would always be Mark Hamill and then Heath Ledger for the live action Joker. So
right.
I don't know. Could you picture Mark Hamill actually dressing up as a Joker in live action?
No, not now. Certainly not now.
Certainly not now. He always seemed to do the mustache and the nice little gray beard going into. So.
Yeah, right.
I
thought that was Heath Ledger's greatest performance, man. I thought
his
Joker was unbeatable. was awesome.
He started off rocky, but then he got better as the movie went along too. So
right.
It was kind of a shame. It was like going out with a bang too, even though it was an accident, to be honest. So
yeah,
may you rest in peace as well. So
yes, indeed.
So I guess what challenges do you guys face being indie musicians too?
Well, like I said, I mean, we just now started to promote through social media. So especially for a long distance band, we don't perform. So accessing an audience is really difficult. So for a while, we were really kind of relying on what we'd built up over a lifetime of playing music. There's always been a lot of people who are interested in what we're doing because we played in other bands together or played in other bands, period. So, but when you're depending on kind of a fan base that's over time, grown into other habits, gotten interested in other bands, gotten interested in other things, their lives take over, they really don't have the time that they had. I remember when we were in our 20s and 30s, every weekend we'd have the same people coming to see us because they didn't have as much going on in their lives. They weren't married, didn't have kids. So at this stage, it's a lot harder for us to tap into that same fan base that we'd always had, individually and collectively. So that's one of the hardest things for us because we don't perform. Trying to find new fans, find a new audience, and so that we've really been fortunate to find all of you on Facebook and through social media.
That's pretty good here. I would say, would you do something similar to Vox and Sticks, where I think they said they use Zoom, and I think it was somehow Greg was able to utilize some stuff to make sure that they're all in sync and everything too.
Right.
So when the drummer counts you in, you're able to know that the counting's right there, and then everything matches too. Would you try to do something like that if you wanted to?
Yeah, and like I said, the guys have on occasion they've tried to use Jam Kazam, which is similar, and it's Jam Kazam is really meant for bands. So I don't know if it operates at better buffer rates and higher speed, but they've been able to do it with the three of them. I don't know how difficult it would be for us. We'd probably have to upgrade our computers to be able to do all four of us. There was a little bit of lag. They found that there was a little bit of lag when they did it, but if it were possible, we would probably be rehearsing more often, or at least trying to do some forms of rehearsal. And I think once the album is completed and we're looking at a possibility of playing out and doing some support for it, we're going to have to, and I'm going to have to try and get out to Vegas because I'm the odd man out. The rest of those guys they're far enough apart that they don't jam together, but they're close enough that if necessity required it, we could all get together.
I would say, have you ever been to Bryce Canyon or Zion National Park?
Yes. Love them.
I would say beautiful places, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say we actually caught the sunrise at Bryce Canyon, and it's a lot different when it's afternoon and evening time too. It's not as hot as it normally is too, so it's freezing in the morning.
Yeah.
But actually I did a nice little video on my iPhone, trying to catch the sunrise there too and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing shorts and I have a light hoodie on, to be honest too. So I'm freezing out here. That's what I did too. But it was still totally worth it. I would tell you that much. It was totally worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And I guess what casinos have you been in Vegas too? Did you been in a good chunk of them, to be honest?
Most of them. At least most of the ones that were there until about 15 years ago. Maybe 10 or 11 years ago. I haven't been there in the last 10 years, but just about every one of them. The old classics up to the new ones. So yeah, and I'm not a big gambler. There was a time when I was, and it got a little too dangerous. I said, all right, I got to stop this. I can't afford to lose any more money. So, but it is the city of lights, man. That's a very entertaining town. I love going there just because there's always so much going on, even if all you're going to do is people watch.
I mean, it's called Sin City for a reason, to be honest. But
right.
I would say my dad was actually watching the Martin Scorsese movie Casino the other day.
Yeah.
And, I guess, did you ever see the movie?
Oh, yeah, classic.
Oh, my gosh. And it's almost damn, Vegas was crazy back in the day. That's what they do behind the scenes.
Right.
So it's almost a good thing we didn't actually notice that, too, for us normal individuals who are they're just trying to have some party or have a good time, to be honest. So
yeah. I mean, that city is built on dead bodies, man.
I would say
the mobsters built that town on dead bodies.
I was trying to think of the whole quote, too, especially when, being in the desert's always made me nervous.
Yeah.
It's a scary place.
Right,
I always heard about the holes they talk about, and everywhere I look, there could be a hole. Sort of
yeah, too easy for you to disappear and nobody to ever find you again.
Yep, that's absolutely true. So let's hope we're at least past that phase. Though I imagine there's something else going on too. So
right.
All right. Conspiracy theory. We'll just leave it at that. Right, oh God, we're turning to Alex Jones now, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I guess in terms of advice, what advice would you give to other indie musicians currently like in band together, and then I guess out there who are maybe not part of the group just yet?
Never give up. I mean, this is a process. It's kind of almost like golf. You never are there. You're never completely finished as a golfer or as a musician. You're always continuing to kind of chase the brass ring. And because this is an ongoing lifestyle love affair, you can't ever give up on it. And I've seen so many musicians that I knew 20, 30, 40 years ago that at the time didn't seem like they really had the juice, but they had the passion. And they became incredible musicians, incredible singers. So never give up. Never give up on trying to capture more audience. Never give up on performing. For us, unfortunately, we can't play out. We can't support it. And I love performing. But after 30 some years of performance, it gets a little long in the tooth, especially the hours. But you never give up. Always keep chasing it. You always keep chasing the next audience. You keep chasing the next fan, because you just never know what message they're going to get from your music, how much it could change their life, and the message you get back from them that changes yours. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me something about how a song that we did or a song that I wrote impacted them and how it then impacted me. So it's this cyclicality of, the influence of the things that you're doing and how much more positive it is for your life, their life. Never give up.
Certain sense it comes full circle whenever something like that happens too.
Absolutely.
I had to laugh when you said golf too, because I immediately picture like people who like freak out whenever they have like a bad shot or something like that.
Yeah,
too.
Right.
Otherwise they would drop the expletives too, and then they have to like bring in some guy to, like do the beep 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 that sort of thing too. So,
exactly.
Actually, there was a Say It Family Guy too. Do you know the show Family Guy by any chance?
Oh yeah.
There was one with Quagmire, and I guess he takes golf a little too seriously too, and he hits it in the woods too, and you just hear all these expletives being censored out. So yeah, he also breaks his one club and everything too. He throws his bag into the bush or something like that too.
Yeah, throws it in the pond.
Was there a pond or a bush? I thought it was the woods at first, but
yeah, it might have been.
Regardless, too, it was still funny as hell, to be honest. So, but that's some good advice there too. So, thank you so much there. And I guess let's jump into the lyrical content actually too. So, I guess obviously you told us about this whole concept album that you guys have in mind, right? Too. I guess what really inspired you to kind of like write something like that, or I guess any of your other songs as well?
Because of the idea that more often than not, a song kind of stands alone, and there's not an awful lot of connection. It's hard to write an entire album that stays on a very singular storyline. I thought one of the easiest ways for me to do this was for this guy to experience past lives. Now I'm Christian. All the guys in the band are Christian, but the ideas of past life have been part of Eastern philosophy. They're even considered some Western philosophy. And so the idea that this guy would have experienced past lives in kind of delving into whether or not he's losing his life or his mind would be an interesting kind of roadmap for connecting songs. So after we completed the first song, Rob and I talked about it, and he's like, look, I'd really like for us to approach this from a concept perspective. Do you have ideas? And I said, yeah, I do. And one of the ideas that I always had about doing a concept album would be how could you connect the songs. And so that idea of the past lives to me kind of made an awful lot of sense. So in each of the songs, I'm trying to put at least one or two lines that indicates that that the protagonist in each of these songs isn't where he's supposed to be, or something brought him to this world, or something brought him to this life, something brought him here that this isn't what he's accustomed to. So I try to make sure that exists in each song, so that there's a seamlessness to this, moving from one life to the next. And like I said, as we do the album, in between there'll be vignettes that will connect each song in the story.
I was gonna say, does the music kind of like carry over into like the next song too? Because I've seen a couple albums that have done that as well.
We did. One of the ways we're doing it is either a riff that Rob used in a previous song, or or part of that song will appear in another song, or I do a lot of background vocals, a lot of so So I'll have some of those same like polyharmonies, background parts that are they trail out the ending of one song, Road to Madness. We did the exact same. We used the same choir, Gothic choir that I used in the beginning of Rain of Fire. We use at the end of Road to Madness, and we're doing the same thing in a couple of the other songs moving forward too. So there will be bits and pieces of previous songs, and I always liked when Sting did that too. Like he'd revisit something that he had in a past song and put a bit of it into a new song. So that's another way that we're trying to connect the songs.
I think what's also funny too is like there's always like a specific riff that band that's like been around for a good while too that they'll use perhaps over and over again too.
Right.
And I noticed it with one of my heavy metal groups. It was like a riff they played on their very first album they released, and then like there was like the first song of maybe like a different album where they kind of revisited at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly different, but regardless, it was still like the same thing you recognize too. So that's kind of
exactly.
Funny.
And I like that too, because it makes sure that you're always connected to what you've done in the past too. Especially if you like something, you're like, hey man, let's bring this back just for a minute, just revisit it for a moment. And the people who know that previous song will immediately respond to it. They're going to say, hey, wait a sec, man, I know that riff. You guys did this before.
Revisit it 20 years later. That's what
right.
So, yeah. So, I do have to ask about the previous bands you had talked about too, but I guess you said one of them was a progressive rock group. Was it kind of like your Jethro Tull, or were you kind of going like Dream Theater sort of ish?
More Dream Theater. It was Dream Theater meets Queensryche. And the guys they'd all gone to Musicians Institute. So they were really into like, intricate timing signatures, 7/8, 15/16, a lot of varying stuff. And so a lot of it was long orchestration, kind of like what we're doing with Rain of Fire. Some of the songs would be, 6-7 minutes long. And, so that was a real challenge for me because I'd never worked with a progressive rock band before. And what it allowed me to do was try to bring some of the hookiness and, still, one of the problems with progressive rock too often is it's so complicated that the average listener can't stick with it. They're like, after 15 minutes, this all sounds like jazz to me. It's all the same. So I tried to make sure that there was enough relativity to the average listener that they stayed connected. And that's what we're trying to do with Rain of Fire too. But 7 Months was a really, really good band. A lot of great guys, a lot of great musicians. I still talk to those guys fairly regularly. And I still I've got my own YouTube channel, just the Joe Booe channel. So I've got all of 7 Months on there, all of Rain of Fire, all of Strychnine, all of the Michael Ray Band, all of Quiver, all of Joe Booe and the Dog. There's another group of guys that I work with, and we're completing an album, group of guys down in Key West called Joe Booe and the Dog. And I've got another guitarist buddy of mine that we had a band called Monkey Fist that Tim Curtis, who's Joe Booe and the Dog, he's the dog. He was the bass player for that band. And Chris DeWitt, who lives here in Florida, here in Sarasota area with me, he was a drummer. And a guy named Randy Nitch, great guitarist. We had a band called Monkey Fist, so we're going to be working on some of that Monkey Fist stuff to try and get that out too, and a couple other songs. So yeah, I've had a lot of success with a lot of bands, and a bunch of guys that I'm still really close to. Still try to, on occasion, get some music done with.
I would say, in terms of the progressive style of music, I know I mentioned Jethro Tull earlier too, because I was doing like Minstrel in the Gallery, trying to think like, can I do this one as a drum cover?
Yeah.
I mean, funny enough, you have to wait like 2 minutes before the drums finally like start coming in and start hammering away, that sort of thing too. Right. So it's kind of the downside in some cases, but it's still a pretty bad song.
If you get a chance, check out the 7 Month stuff. And I've got Facebook pages for each of them, and on Spotify and on all the social media, and it's also on my YouTube channel. The drummer was a beast. His name is Barry Magnuson. So if you get a chance, give those a whirl. But the guy was really, really good. Really good drummer.
Sounds pretty good. I'll have to check it out. Hopefully at some point too. Like,
yeah,
as I mentioned in some of my interviews, I have like a long list like other groups people have always mentioned.
Exactly. You got 2 years 2 years of interviews to go. You got a lot of music still to tap into.
It's that, and then like other groups, they just mention about that influenced them in a way.
Yeah,
it's like bands I never even heard of too, because unfortunately, mine's like pretty limited too. It's only like certain groups, even like during like long car rides. During like long car rides, for instance, I want bands that like do like hour-long albums too, because it really just eats up the time, to be honest. So
right, I
don't know, but I'll have to try to check it at some point too. So thank you so much for sharing. But I guess we talked for a good hour right now, so I guess let's go ahead and jump into the fun questions right now, and then we'll jump into the very last one at the end. Ready?
All right. Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the first one right here. What is your favorite food?
I've got an autoimmune disease, which means there's a whole lot of things I can't eat. If I were to say a favorite food that I can't eat, it would probably be pizza because I'm a Chicago guy. But since there's a lot of restriction to what I can't eat any of the things in pizza. It'd have to be steak. I'm a meat eater. You're a
carnivore, as they would
say.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I want to give it between you and a steak, to be honest, too. Yeah. So. I mean, look at you. You got the nice little rip and everything, too. You work out, bro, or something.
Yeah. Well, I've been a personal trainer for almost 40 years. So.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So, fair enough. All right. And what is your favorite movie?
Oof. Favorite movie? Boy, that is a tough one because it changes all the time. Probably, if you've ever seen it, Denzel Washington, Man on Fire, where he's ex-military guy and he's protecting Dakota Fanning. He's a bodyguard down in Mexico. And Denzel Washington's just a badass.
They actually did the Equalizer 3 recently, too.
Yeah,
so it looks
I saw it.
I think I've seen parts of like 1 and 2, to be honest. I never watched them like the whole way through, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much just one guy just kicking everybody's ass, to be honest, too. So it's like, what difference does it make?
He still plays the same guy and everything.
It's that, too. It's kind of the same thing with like Jason Statham, to be honest, too. I mean, like, you're not killing this guy. So it's almost like, what difference does it make?
Right. He's like Michael Myers. He's the good guy, Michael Myers, just unkillable.
That, too, yeah. So fair enough. But I don't think I ever seen that one. I think was it American Gangster? Was that what it was?
Oh, another great movie. American Gangster with him and Russell Crowe.
That's what I thought. I thought it was named somebody else, but I thought I'd throw the name out there just to be safe. But,
yeah.
All right. There's that one. And I don't know if this kind of affects your condition, to be honest, but I guess in terms of favorite drinks, name which ones are your favorite, alcoholic and non-alcoholic.
I was always just a beer drinker, and now that's, again, something I can't drink. But a buddy of mine, in fact, the drummer from Monkey Fist, he makes his own whiskey, and I'm definitely not supposed to drink whiskey, but it's DeWitt whiskey, and it is the best whiskey I've ever had. It's probably the only alcohol I would drink at this point. DeWitt whiskey.
Does he try to sell it to like local restaurants? To be honest, try to do it that way. See if he can make a.
He hasn't been yet. It's still small enough that it goes to like immediate connection. So if you know him, then you can get it. Otherwise, yeah.
I think it's the age of the microbreweries, but now it's not so much those big tanks you see like those restaurants or little factories or whatever. Now it's like everybody's got their own little microbrewery in their house now too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of the same thing with like how the home studios came around too at some point.
Right.
Too, so.
Right. It's amazing how you can get what would have taken a couple $100,000 recording studio in like 25, 30 years ago. You would have needed to have a full blown studio to do what we can do now on our computers and a couple outboard pieces of equipment, some software.
Yeah, absolutely too. I would say when I was in Italy recently, because this actually was just this year, and I actually tried limoncello. Did you ever try that before?
No. Good.
You know what? It was strong. I will tell you that much.
Really? Yeah.
I could not do it. I mean, it felt like it shot at my nose and everything too. So it was almost like someone shot pepper spray. I mean, it's surprisingly they gave that for a dessert. It was like, surprisingly they don't do like just coffee right off the bat too. It's like coffee, limoncello. I think it does like the treats afterwards too. I forget how.
Yeah, you got a whole series of things you have to drink after a meal, right?
Something like that. And I guess it's also proper etiquette for Italy, to be honest too. Or I'm assuming other European nations kind of do the same thing, to be honest too. So
yeah.
You know what? That was the last time I did it, but I actually did get a bottle. Actually, a funny story. I was actually meant to bring a whole bottle back to the restaurant I work at, and I was trying to remember the details first, so that's why I paused. But unfortunately, it was a little over the limit, so I could not bring it back through customs.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the bottle probably got returned to its owner or something like that.
Bummer.
But I was able to get a very small bottle back.
Yeah.
So a couple people had a couple shots. So
that's cool.
I don't know how the process works, but it sounds like you just take the rinds of lemons and just dip it in vodka and just leave it there for like a couple of days or something like that too. So that's what I thought I heard. I honestly don't know. But
limoncello, I got to remember this.
I don't know, but you guys try it if you want, and then let me know what you all think too. So we'll see what happens. And currently, what is your favorite song, or at least a song you've been listening to a good bit for the last fun questions?
I've always been a big Shinedown fan, and even their first album I thought was one of their best ones. So I still listen to 45 a lot, but I also like their version of Simple Man. So I'd probably say that.
Actually, I think, funny enough, I heard like Second Chance the other night too. So
yeah.
Was that from the same album or was that a different one?
That's the second album. That's from the next one.
That was the next one. Okay. I would say, well, Shinedown too, it sounds like you were also a big fan of Stain as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tend to get pretty strong with the lyrics too. So I think they kind of cooled down a little bit, but I know in the beginning of like Break the Cycle, I think the very first album they released was called Torment. I think it was what that was called too. So
yeah, Aaron Lewis he's a pretty prolific writer. I really like his stuff a lot.
I think a lot of it's personal too, so I don't know how much of that was
I do too.
True. So
yeah, right.
I would just say like, man, I feel so bad for you, Aaron. So God bless you too.
It sounds like he's had a pretty rough life.
Do tell. So
yeah,
you know what? This was a fun question too, but considering how big the Powerballs have gone recently, if you would have won, let's just say it's $1 billion in this case. I think right now it's like $500 million right now.
Right.
If you were to win that kind of money, I guess what would you do?
I would immediately quit both of my jobs and do nothing but make music for the rest of my life.
I guess do you have any debts or anything like that?
You know, actually, I don't. I don't have a whole lot of debt. I've always kind of worked 2 or 3 jobs, so I keep myself fairly debt free. My lifestyle is fairly simple. So I would probably continue doing what I'm doing. I just do a whole lot more of it. Do a lot of music, an awful lot of music.
I think funny
and probably offer the opportunity for a lot of friends of mine who either can't afford to or don't have as many options. See to it that they could get those options.
I think funny enough, the recent one that was like 1.7 billion. It actually was to somebody in Florida. I think close to a retirement home, or something like that. So I don't know.
That's who always wins.
Yeah,
it's always
the
somebody
older
who lives
people
in a trailer park, or yep, exactly.
Or it's like you just walk in, you end up being like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. You get that one golden ticket.
Yeah, right.
That pisses me off so much, to be honest with you. Especially if you spent like $100 trying to get X amount of tickets from that too.
Yeah,
so.
Right. It's somebody who just randomly came in and bought one ticket and they end up winning.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think if it were up to me first, I would pay off all my debt. I would actually finally get my house. Yeah. I would upgrade the man cave into the studio and everything too.
Right.
I had to think it through at first, but maybe put like a drum set in one spot, get like high grade, like a camera gear and stuff like that too. We're going top of the line, baby. That sort of thing.
Right.
Too.
Of course.
So,
of course.
I bet you.
Yeah. See, you're not straying far from where mine would be too, man.
It'd be something like that.
Actually,
I do have to ask, like, who does your videos? When I was checking out your YouTube channel with like the Road to Madness and Desert Caravan.
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I do everything video wise is done by me in house. So the guys, I'll have them film for me with green screens, and I use stock video, and I build all the video together on a software package called Power Director 16, and so there was it was a learning curve. And when I first started doing it, I did it with Strychnine when we were still trying to work on some Strychnine songs. And over the course of the however many videos I've done now, the skills have improved, and it's still not studio quality. It's not like we bring in a film crew, but yeah, I do all the video myself.
I have to say, damn,
and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of time. It takes a lot of time.
I would imagine too, but damn it, that's pretty good. Actually,
thank you.
I was watching Desert Caravan too, feeling like, did you actually go out to Saudi Arabia or something?
Yeah, there was all stock video. I belong to a stock video website. And, you pay for it annually. But so there's tens of thousands of stock video clips that are maybe 15 seconds to 30 seconds long. And so I build the video out of that.
That's pretty damn good. So
thanks, man.
That's up to you, mate. That's up to you.
Thank you. That's a labor of love. I really do enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. All right. So, Joe, we've talked for almost an hour and 15 minutes, and we're kind of near the end of my podcast. We're down to the last question. Before we jump into that, did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
Brian, just want to say this was an absolute joy, man. I enjoyed doing this. Thank you very much for having me on. And I think what you're doing is incredible. I think what you're doing for the community is awesome. So keep doing it.
No worries. And thank you again so much for coming on too. It's always great having these sort of conversations as well, because I actually interviewed Jackie Kay not so long ago, and she actually shared one of my posts. And so moments like those really help out too. So.
Well, this is definitely getting, as soon as it's posted, it's getting linked to our Facebook page and my personal page, and everybody's going to know about it. So
we're famous nationwide. That's
right, man.
All right.
Worldwide.
Well, We're not there yet. We'll start nationwide first. Then we'll expand.
Yeah.
So
you got it.
Actually, I have interviewed a good number of people internationally too. So
cool.
Or at least try to get to that point. They were not in bands yet too. They were at least YouTube drummers, for instance, or use people who just do more of like social media in terms of like as a hobby, not so much as a career. So
right.
All right. So Joe, for the last question right here, you might have already touched on this a good bit too, but I'm sorry to kind of have you reiterate some sort of points here and there, but this one deals with like hope in a certain way too. So given what COVID has done, what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move forward in a post-COVID world?
Well, I think no matter what obstacles we face, and modern man faces so many of them. We face issues with poverty. We face issues with starvation. We face issues with warfare all over the place. COVID's just another obstacle that we have to face. But the one thing that we always have to stay true to is our humanity and the connections that we make person to person. And one of the big ones is, music is kind of the universal language. So I think as a musician, if you're a musician or if you're involved with music or if you're even just a music fan, don't ever let go of those messages that you either give or come from either a song that I'd done, a song that I'd heard, or a song that someone else had heard, and they talk to me about it and tell me how it's changed their life or had such an impact on them. That in turn had an impact on me. So if you're an artist of any form, continue to do it because you just never know how much of an impact you're having on the world around you.
Spoken like a true prodigy. So.
Thank you, brother.
All right. So, Joe, we've reached the end of my podcast right here, and I want to thank you so much for coming on, also sharing your advice and also words of wisdom, too. So I guess, do you have any final words or any shout-outs you want to give before we close?
I want to say thanks to all the guys in Rain of Fire. This has been an awesome ride. Love you guys like brothers. And hope everybody enjoys the podcast. And Brian, thanks again for having us on.
And a big shout out to all the fans who listen to our music, too.
You got it.
Yeah, listening to the podcast as well, too.
Awesome.
So, and I guess, how else can people reach you and also check out the band?
They can find us on rof.rocks, which is our website. We're also on X, so Twitter or X. We're on Facebook. We're on Spotify, Pandora, all the streaming services. We're on YouTube. So anywhere they want to find us, and they can email me at rainoffireband0@gmail.com.
I would say instead of X, they probably should have did it as Y, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that would have just been absolutely perfect. It would have been hilarious as well, too.
Right. It really would have.
I don't know.
Why even with a question mark after it?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, at this point, you might as well just ask that question. Like, why am I even on Twitter at this point?
Right.
So, all right. Okay. So, everyone, I guess that was Joe Booe, hailing from Sarasota, Florida. Also, check out his group. And I guess if they're out there making new music pretty soon, and I guess hit them up on the socials and everything. If you guys see any of the group out in Vegas, make sure you guys hit them up as well. And if you happen to be a damsel in distress, make sure to look for this guy as your firefighter saving the day right there too. So
definitely.
All right. So everyone, make sure you guys hit these guys up. These guys are doing wonders out there too. So Joe, thank you again so much again for coming on.
Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Brian.
Stay safe. God bless. Stay tuned, y'all.
You too.